Alright, so I looked at the Exosister archetype initially and it looked really gimmicky. Then I looked at what it can actually do in something like the OCG and gained a lot of hope. This archetype looks extremely fun to play and is really nutty. It can play through a good number of disruptions and has some really interesting lines, but for now is a bit gimmicky. So I decided to play it, and what better way than to just slap in a halq engine. And honestly, one of the newest cards to come out of the set that Exosisters came out with is Cupid Pitch, and using a halq engine, you can really use that to your leverage, and it can put up some pretty nasty fields. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's explain what the deck does, what it can do, and why you might want to play this. So first of all, let's talk about the actual Exosister archetype, the quote-unquote stars of the show that are really just extenders if you look at it in the grand scheme of things. So basically, they're lesbian exorcists. Lesbians, I don't know how, but that's apparently what they are. And basically, they all come in pairs. If they activate their effect and their respective pairs on the field, you can get 800 life points, which is okay, because a lot of your spell traps do require you to pay 800, which in the long run can lead you to getting OTK'd much easier. If anything, Long Wand from the Sword Soul archetype has taught me that even the smallest bit of burn can make OTKs infinitely easier, I'm telling you. And they also allow you to then, this is not a quick effect by the way, which is sad, I wish it was, it would make this archetype just that little bit better, that if your opponent moves a card out of either player's graveyard, whether it's bouncing, returning to the deck, or if it's summoning, or if it's, I think returning it to the hand. No, I've said that again. Yeah, so basically if they move a card out of the graveyard, period, you can then slap an Exosister Xyz monster on top of them. And the Xyz monsters aren't half bad, and in fact are somewhat worth it. And well, otherwise let's go over what the pairs can do. So Elis can extend. If you control another one of the archetype monsters, you can summon it. And Stella, who is part of the pair, has a somewhat similar effect where you can belch out Exosister monsters from your hand. Next you have Irene, which lets you mulligan one, it's the weakest one. And then Sophia, which allows you to draw one if you control another in the archetype, which is pretty neat, and I like Sophia a lot. Then we play the in-archetype spells and traps. We play 3 packs, which is a quick effect card that just allows you to search for any card in your archetype. It's pretty decent, and then, it has a second clause, but you don't really use it that much, to be honest. Then we have Vadis, which allows you to pay 800 and basically summon a pair onto your side of the field, but during the end phase, they're gonna have to be shuffled back into the deck. Also, this does lock you into Exosister monsters, but normally you're using this on your opponent's turn. The way I use this card is that I set it, I build my board, and then I wait for my opponent's turn, and with my already batshit crazy board that I establish, this is just a bit of a cherry on top, where if my opponent even tries to use the graveyard, I can really punish them, and more importantly, I can also just use some really powerful Xyz monsters. Then we have Arment, which is a quick effect rank up essentially. You can rank up on a main deck monster or an extra deck monster by paying 800 life points, and yeah, this is pretty good, but you can only use it during your opponent's turn unless your opponent controls a reborn monster, which is a really weird clause. But anyways, let's look at the Xyz monsters. This is your best monster. It can spell speed 1, detach 1 to search for a spell trap, which, as we've seen, are pretty good. And quick effect, during the turn it's summoned, you can then banish a card in the grave or the field, specifically card of your opponent's, right? And I lost the Sky Striker matchup because I didn't know this could be any card and not just monsters. However, you do need to have used summoned Michaelis using an Exosister as material. And this is a quick effect, and again, it's only for the turn it's summoned. So ideally, you're summoning this during your opponent's turn, or on your turn where your opponent has a field that you're trying to actively get rid of. It can also bait disruptions, which is pretty nice. So I really like this card. Then Caspatel, which, well, when it's summoned using a material that's an Exosister, can lock your opponent from reborning, and also can spell speed 1 detach to then search for a monster in the archetype. Slightly weaker, but still welcome. And this can't be destroyed by battle with a monster that's been reborn. Same with this. Next, Gibrine can't be destroyed by the activated effects of reborn monsters, and can quick effect if it used a Exosister Exosister monster as material can negate a card, right? And also you can detach one, and then everything gains 800 if it's an Xyz, which is nice, I guess. I haven't used this card at all. And then we have a Sophie, which cannot be destroyed by the activated effect of monsters from the grave, blah blah blah. If it's summoned using Exosister monster material, your opponent can't use card effects from the graveyard, which is nice in certain matchups against things like Eldritch. And it's again for the turn that you activate this effect. And you can also spell speed one, detach one, and then bounce a monster your opponent controls, which is nice. I haven't used this card again. You're mainly going to go into Michaelis or Caspitel. These are your best cards, period. Anyways, let's go over the P.U.N.K engine and why we play it in this deck. Short answer, it makes halq, which is already good enough. We have cards like Cupid Pitch, which is an incredibly powerful card that you can abuse the shit out of using Mecha Phantom Beast or Auroradon to really consistently put up 3 negates on your field, and sometimes even 4, especially with the P.U.N.K archetype. And well, let's get to the P.U.N.K archetype. So first of all, you have no P.U.N.K Xiamen, pay 600, and then add a monster in the archetype from your deck to your hand. This pays 600 and adds a trap. Next, you have Foxy Tune, which discards itself and a card you have in your hand to summon a P.U.N.K from your deck for free. We're missing a card that's basically an extender for the archetype called Deer Note, which would make this incredibly powerful because we could then just, let's say, get the Xiamen and then search for that card and then special summon it. And then, oh look, we didn't use our normal summon, so we can save that for later. But because we don't have that, it's a lot less consistently making you end up with crazy boards, and more often than not, you're just going to end on the triple Omni Negate, which is still really good, mind you. So the in-archetype trap that you run is Jururi P.U.N.K Dangerous Gabu, which is an infinite impermanence, where if you control a P.U.N.K, which is unlikely by the way, you can also gain life points equal to the original attack of that monster you impermed. And basically the entire purpose of the deck is to just make halq, then make Auroradon, then basically make Cupid Pitch, Borreload Savage, Baron de Fleur, and Herald the Arc Light. You play 1 soft garnet and 2 hard garnets in the form of Despot 01, Mecha Phantom Beast Colt Wing, and Creation Resonator. You can open this in your hand, but this means that you will have to end up adding a Xiamen through a certain effect later on in the turn, which is fine. You might be okay opening with this as long as you can make halq, because halq can summon from hand, but you cannot open with this because Auroradon can only summon from deck, which means opening this really sucks for you. Yeah, because the whole purpose of this card is to special summon it, but if you normal summon it, it's useless, honestly. So anyways, otherwise it's really nothing special. You just run maybe some out of archetype monsters that support spellcasters. This allows you to belch your field out with more cards. It's a tuner, by the way. You have Trismegistus, it's godly. It allows you to play through a lot of disruptions or set up an incredibly powerful board by allowing you to special summon a level 4 spellcaster from your hand for free during the main phase. And all your, main deck Exosisters monsters are actually level 4 spellcasters, which makes this deck pretty nice. And well, that's kind of it really. That's the entire deck profile, which is why I'm going to go over a single replay that was super, super, super nasty. Honestly, I don't know if I could get a better replay. This embodies what the deck really wants to do, and it does it really well. So in this replay, we end up setting up 4 interruptions, 3 Omni Negates, and 1 Imperm in the form of the Dangerous Gabu, and then also have the ability to set up with 2 Exosister monsters on the field using the in-archetype trap, Exosister Vadis, which really comes in clutch here. So let's go ahead and stop the replay over here and just go over what we've opened. So Foxy Tune, incredible already, allows us to end up accessing our pool of monsters in order to either search for the Dangerous Gabu, or more importantly, just make halq. We have Trismegistus, which is godly every time you open it, which allows us to not use our normal summon and get off our Exosister shenanigans. We can use Sophia, which allows us to draw 1, and we can use that card we draw in order to discard for Foxy Tune. And we have Elis, which allows us to swarm our field. So let's go on with the plays and see what happens. So we activate Trismegistus, and then after that, we swarm our field, summoning the Sophia. No, okay, we messed up here. We summoned Elis, but we really shouldn't have. We normal summoned the Sophia, but we could have done this without the normal summon. But either way, this is one nasty replay. We draw one, which is a duplicate, so we're obviously sacking this. We use Foxy Tune, and here's where things get interesting. So we could have gone for Xiamen, but we went for Madame Spider, and we're going to search for the Gabu. And what we're going to do here is actually really interesting. So normally, this is the reason why you want to run multiple copies of your in-archetype boss monster, Michaelis, because I'm going to use it to make halq. So I get Dangerous Gabu, I set it, and then after that, I go into Michaelis. So then I will use its effect to search for Vadis, which is an incredible trap that we're going to use to our advantage, and then I'll link these two off for halq, as you will see. Alright, and it took me a couple of tries to get this combo down, but basically you're doing the shenanigans, summoning Auroradon, right? And then you gotta really get this particular part right. So you summon your 3 tokens, right? Then you summon your 0-1, but you have to be very particular about how you do this. You can't be lax unlike in Sword Soul. So you summon this, and specifically you want to first synchro off for Cupid Pitch and make it increase its level to 5. Then you want to tribute your 2 tokens over here to then summon Coltwing from your deck. That's going to then summon 2 more tokens, which will then trigger the 0-1 to summon itself. This is really important. You're keeping the Phantom Beast Auroradon on the field for your end board. It's a little weird, but whatever it is, it gets the job done. So Auroradon tributes those 2 tokens, summons Coltwing, Coltwing summons 2 tokens, and then we summon 0-1 from the graveyard because we summon 2 or more machine monsters simultaneously. And now, here's where we gotta be careful. So first, we're gonna synchro off for Borreload Savage using the Pitch and using the token, right? Then the Pitch's effect is gonna activate and search for a 600 defense monster. We're running Creation Resonator for this purpose, but if we already hard drew the Creation Resonator, I did in a couple instances, we can just search for Xiamen instead because it does have 600 defense as well, which is really important. It does help for follow-up plays, but either way, halq is limited to 1 in this format. So anyways, we're going to go ahead and equip a halq from our graveyard to our Savage, and we're going to get Creation Resonator and then summon the Creation Resonator. Next, you see, here's the thing, Creation Resonator is a tuner, so we're going to go ahead and synchro off the Creation Resonator and our level 7, what was it called? Coltwing, for a Baron de Fleur, which is a little bit absurd, but it is what it is. So we make the Baron, and then with our remaining 1 and 3, we make Herald of the Arclight. And it is it's a macrocosmos for anything that wishes to foolish a monster, which is pretty nice. Alright, let's move on. And anyways, this is our end board, and we move on to our opponent's turn. We're going to then summon Vadis and summon 2 monsters from our deck, which allows us to then basically tag into our Exosister Xyz monsters, get a quick effect Banish with our Michaelis, which is an incredibly solid card in general. It's really good. And also we're going to make our Caspitel off of one of the cards we get, since it does remove our opponent's potential for locking from using the graveyard, which is incredibly powerful, alongside our 3 Omni Negates and our Imperm. So yeah, and we have a Max C, which makes this incredibly nasty. So I thought this dude was playing Branded, so I was like, no, I'm not letting you get things to dump, but well, yeah, then I use Vadis. Then my opponent will then use a second one, which is sad, but whatever. You know, wasted negate at this point. Gonna get the Polymerization and Etchimp Chain, but surprisingly, this dude is playing Fluffles. Yeah, Sen's Toy Vendor. So I just kind of let this dude do whatever he wants, and because this dude ends up using this in order to move a card out of his graveyard, we get to then use our 2 Exosister monsters in order to smack on top of them some Xyz monsters, which is really, really funny. I love this. So we summon Caspital, then after that, we summon the Michaelis, and this is kind of just game already. our opponent's practically dead. Can't really do anything. We have already another 3 negates, a banish, and also a lockdown. Our opponent tries to run over this card, but then we banish their dolphin, and then they just scoop. Yeah, this deck's a little bit stinky, a little bit nasty, and with the new cards that they may add in future patches that give them 1-card combos and everything, this deck could be truly a force to reckon with. But right now, its biggest weaknesses are the Sword Soul matchup, which really sucks because they hard lose to Sword Soul.